So I'm going to show you how to make the toilet paper roll doll cover. As you can see, you lift it up, there's your toilet paper roll. Okay. This is kind of a retro pattern. Probably used to see these in your grandmother's bathroom. Okay, I figured I'd go all retro this year. I'll do some retro patterns. And so I'll move that out of the way. I'm not going to teach this exact one because it's kind of difficult, but I will put it in the pattern if you choose to go in and buy the pattern. I will go ahead and show you how I'm going to do this. Now I am going to do the fan cast on, okay? And I'm going to be personally using my X Loom. I'm going to be using 60 pegs, so I've set my loom up for 60 pegs. Now, this is in the 1/2 inch gauge. If you have a round loom in 60 pegs in the 1/2 inch gauge, you can use it, but when you get to this, you're going to have to change up how you're doing it, okay? And I'll explain how to do that, okay? Now, the top part of the dress is separate. And you can do a round loom for the top part of the dress. But the X loom I'm using for this light, really nice decrease section here, as you can see, it puts in for a really clean line, okay? And as you can see, there's a seaming in the back, so you're actually going to sew the doll into the dress, okay? Now, if you take the doll out of the dress, I took her legs off because a little too tall, but this is what it looks like. So you could just make this as a dress and put it on the doll. If you did, it would be long enough, you know, it'd be tall enough. But I took part of the legs off and in order for it to fit in there. But really, the kind of doll that you need is a shorter doll. And I mean, you can do a Barbie and you can kind of take the legs off and that kind of thing, but what you want to do is you want to get a doll that's around 7 inches tall, which I'm finding is to be difficult, and on average those dolls are going to cost you about $7. This doll was probably about $3, $2, somewhere in there. It wasn't expensive, but that's the thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing more like a sailor dress kind of thing. So I'm going to be using some patriotic colors, blue, white, red, that kind of thing. And I'm going to be showing you how to do this cast on. But this is the windmill stitch. I'm going to be showing a tutorial on how to do the windmill stitch. And if you want to make this with the windmill stitch, I'll explain how to do that. And the thing is, I'm going to try and do probably a little bit of a different dress top, okay? But if you have a 60 peg loom, you can make this. You don't have to have an X loom, but the X loom makes for a really nice decrease section, okay? All right, so let's get started. I'm going to actually do my fan cast on with the blue. Okay, and that'll give it a really nice look. Let me find my end here. On this blue. And I'll need to explain how to set up your X loom if you have it. If you have a large one, you can use, you just need a 1/2 inch gauge X loom, because I'm not using the full maxed out. So if you have a small one, you can use the small one. If you have a large one, extra large, you can still use it, okay? All right, so here's how this works. 2 sides are going to be longer than one, okay? So you're going to have, let me move this down. You're going to count over 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and there's your 14, okay? That's going to mirror each other, so these are going to be the same. Now, this one's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So 16 on the opposites of each other, okay? So 16, 14. So 14, 16, 14, 16, and you always want your shorters on the opposite side, so that when you go in and you start decreasing, you can decrease your first one to get every set even, okay, and then you can just decrease down to your 24 stitches, okay? So that's a quick setup, all right? Take this marker off. This was from the last project I did. All right, so what we want to do is we want to do a fan cast on all the way around. That should be fairly easy. All right. So what you want to do is you want to get you a stitch marker. All right. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, so you cast it on 6. What you want to do is you want to put a stitch marker on the end stitch. Alright. Okay. This is my first time really showing how to use one of the techniques that between the crocodile stitch and the fan cast on. This is my first time really using it into a project. I want to start utilizing that more, so you may be seeing this technique more often. Okay, so I've cast on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. All right, now you can choose to do a seed stitch if you want, okay, or you can just choose to knit it. So this is going to be row 1. All right. And I'm going to slip the ends once I've gotten started. Okay. And this is going to be row 2. This is going to be row 3. And row 4. And row 5. Okay, and this is where you're going to gather. Right, so you do 5 rows. All right. Then you're going to wrap the next stitch. You're going to wrap and turn the next stitch. Then you're going to grab it and you're going to send it through the bottom like a pearl. Okay. Okay. Okay, what does it? Okay. All right, then you're going to take all the stitches off, hold this, all right. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to take this stitch and you're going to move it over 2. So there's your first stitch, first peg. You're going to move it over 2. Now, what you want to try to do is you want to try to find which side of your loop and pull it so it gets tighter. And you want to just keep pulling on the section while pulling your working yarn. Okay, and then when you're ready, you just put that on and pull it. Okay, then the next thing you want to do is you want to put this stitch you've got on your stitch marker, you want to put it back on the loom. Okay. And it can give you trouble, so make sure your cast-on's a little looser, okay? Alright. And, as you can see, you have your first fan. Okay. Go ahead and undo that. Alright. Now, what I like to do is go in and wrap around and knit 1, 2, go ahead and take my stitch markers off, and 3. Now I'm going to start out immediately and we're going to kind of move that stitching over like we did earlier, and I didn't show that originally in my video, and the reason being is I had just figured it out, but I find that you get a gappy look, and this will basically remove that gappy look. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next 6 stitches. Now I know it's going to go over this direction, but if you can work straight, why not? You're going to be picking up these stitches, you're going to be moving them around anyway. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, I'm going to place a stitch marker on those end stitches. Alrighty. Now this is a tedious cast on, I will not lie, but it's well worth it. You get a really nice pretty edge, okay? So I feel like it's really worth the effort. Alright, so here is row 1. Okay. Now I'm just going to show this one, then I'm going to tell you to go along. Alright. Alright, so there's row 1. You're going to slip the first stitch, knit the last stitch. Row 2. Row 3. Row 4. And of course row 5. Okay, this is our last row doing this, and again you can garter stitch it, you can seed stitch it, these 5 rows, it's up to you if you want it to lay flatter. I would suggest doing some sort of stitch pattern that lays it flatter. So you're going to wrap that next stitch, okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to pull through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, now what you're going to do is you're going to take off those stitches. Okay, and then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to move this over 2 slots. So 1, 2, place it there. Okay. So you're going to find which side you need to pull to tighten that. So which side? This side. It may change every time, but you want to keep pulling it tight as you close this off. Okay. All right. So close that off. And then what you want to do, you want to move this stitch over 1. Okay. So you're going to take and pick that up and move it over 1. And you just did that without having to work in that little crevice, and just got your entire without having to do the tight area. Okay. So you put that on. And yes, it can be a little tough at times. Okay, and then you want to put this on this side. Okay. Alrighty. Now, what you want to do is you want to knit 1, 2, and 3. Alrighty. Now, you got how this is done. You got 2 fans here, see? And you didn't even have to work your way around that corner. Alright? So, what you want to do next is you want to work your way all the way around, okay? Now when you get over into here, you're going to be overlapping. Just make sure you don't take over those original stitches. Now back here, because I don't think that 60 is divisible by 4, you may have an overlap somewhere in here, okay? If you do, it's okay, all right? You can make this the back of your area over here, okay? And it doesn't really matter. It's not going to really show all that much anyway. But if you're particular, and I know some of y'all are particular knitters, you can try to adjust it if you want. Try to overlap where that's overlapping on that and that kind of thing. But it means you might have to do more fans, okay? So go ahead and pause the video, and what I may do is when I get over here, I'll show you how to finish this up and what that overlapping means and that kind of thing, okay? But go ahead and work your way around because it does take a while, and then when we come back, it gets really easy. We're going to switch to red, and I'm pretty much going to want to do a stockinette stitch, but here is where on the bulk of it, you have 24 rows to do basically whatever stitch pattern you want. So choose a stitch pattern, you do it in a round, it's easy enough, and then you're going to switch to a stockinette for the top, okay? So pause the video, get your fan cast on done, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so as you can see, I've done several of them, and I'm back around here, and so I'm going to show you something. There's going to be a little overlapping going on. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, naturally you place your stitch markers in there, just like you've been doing. You're just overlapping to get by, okay? And that's not difficult to be able to keep up with. Don't touch these stitches here. So, of course, you go in and you knit your 5 rows, and you do like always, okay? And looking at it, it came out evenly, so that's good. That'll make it easier to do this. And you're only ever having to overlap by 2. Okay. So here's 1, here's 2. Make sure you don't touch the original stitches on those overlapped pegs, okay? And here is 3. And here's 4. And 5. We're about ready to move on to the next section, and this is where it's wide open to you on what you want to do. It's you need to do 24 rows, and it can be a stockinette, it could be a seed stitch, it can be some sort of fancy stitch. You just want to do it for 24 rows, okay? Pull that through. So this is a guide on how to get started making these, okay? I always like giving a guide because it helps to know that you can just be as creative as you want on your own personal time, and sometimes you just need a base line, and so this is your baseline. You don't even have to do this. You can do just a regular cast on if you want. So pick that up, move it over to where you have a stitch sitting there, figure out which side you need to pull to tighten that, and then you can just pull this down. Okay. And there you have that. And then what you want to do is you want to pull that on and pull that on. Okay. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just knit all the way around. As you can see, we've gotten this done. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just knit in this color all the way around just to get everything nice and connected, okay? And then what I want to do is I'm going to switch over to red, and I'm going to knit, we'll say, a few rows, 3 rows of red, and then do 3 rows of white, and then go to doing a row of blue or whatever, some striping, and then finish it up in white. And so that's kind of what I'm going to do with my 24 stitches. I'm going to keep it kind of simple, okay, so that you see what you're doing, and you can do some fancier color working here, some Fair Isle stuff if you want. It's wide open to you. You just need to figure out what you're doing with your 24 rows, okay? So this just gets you set up after that, all right? So just know you're starting with 60 stitches. You want to work, you have a nice cast on, then you want to work 24 rows and around. It didn't have to be anything special if you don't want it to be, or it can be really fancy like that windmill stitch I showed you, something like that along those lines, okay? So what I am doing, once I get around to my starting point, again, I'm going to switch over to red. I'm going to do 3 rows of red. I'm going to do 2 rows of white. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do 3 rows of red, and then I'm going to finish up in white the rest of my rows, okay? So if you want to write that down, I'm fixing to switch up. 3 rows of white, 3 rows of red, 2 rows of white, 3 rows of red, and then finish up your 24 rows in white, all right? When we come back, we'll be ready to start decreasing. And that's where it's going to change up some if you're doing it on a round loom. It's 12 rows total. And you're basically going to be doing a drawstring, fine gauge drawstring bind off with a few extra rows. I usually do a single row. You're probably going to be doing 2 rows in between, if not 3, when you decrease. Okay? All right, so we're here back at the beginning, and we're now ready to change up to our red. All right, so here's where you're going to pause the video, and you're going to complete your 24 rows, okay? So I'm going to be doing 3 rows of red. So 3 rows of red, 2 rows of white, 3 rows of red, and then I'm going to finish up everything else that's left with the 24 rows total, okay? And when we come back, we should be on white, and we'll be ready to do our decreasing. Now, keep in mind, you can do whatever stitch pattern you want, any stitch pattern you want. Doesn't have to do what I'm doing. I'm just showing you a base guideline so you know what you want to do. Okay, let's see if I can get this in scope well enough. Okay, so what I have done is, you can see, is 2, sections of red with one of white, and then just the rest of it white. Okay, now I actually did a few more rows because I recalled the fact that I had used more of a bulky yarn with my first project. Okay, and I had designed for 24 rows. With this, I did 26 to 28 in a worsted weight. So keep that in mind. If you're adjusting the weight of the yarn, you might need to adjust how many rows you're doing. So I just did a couple of more rows. At this point, I have done my 24 rows. This is where you could have done any stitch patterning you wanted. Okay. Now, what I need to do is I need to decrease my long sections first, which is in here. Okay. And then we'll be able to do all four. All right. And how this is going to work is you're going to decrease these two long sections to make every section even, which is important. Okay. Now, if you're doing this on a round loom, you're going to go in and you're going to start working like a drawstring, fine gauge drawstring bind off. But instead of doing like one row in between, you're going to do like 2 rows in between, 2 to 3 rows in between to get that gradual decrease in. Okay. All right. So I have decreased those, and now what I need to do is just knit my way around. Okay. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to knit my way around and knit the 2 stitches together on those decreased wedges. Okay. Now you saw how I went in and did a wedge decrease. If you need that breakdown, there is a video on showing you how to break that down. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're just going to knit your way around after that wedge decrease, and then you're going to just do a regular row. You're going to do a regular row between each wedge decrease where you do all 4 wedges. This is the only row where you're going to do just 2. Okay. And then you're going to switch it up and you're going to do all 4. Okay. So you're going to toss both loops over. Make sure you get both of them. Toss both loops over. Alright. So what you want to do is you want to pause the video and you want to knit your way around after doing that wedge decrease. And you're going to do just a regular knit around. Then you're going to wedge decrease all 4 and knit around. Then you're going to knit a single row in between the decrease rows, okay? So it's decrease a row, knit a row. Decrease a row, knit a row. And what that means is you're decreasing all 4 wedges and then you're knitting a row. And you want to do this until you are down to your smallest amount, your 24 pegs, okay? So what you want to do is go ahead and pause the video and get yourself down that far. And so when we come back, you should have 24 pegs, and I'll show you how to finish up. Then we'll be starting the doll part of the dress. And I'm having a time finding a standard doll you can buy that isn't trying to rip off its legs and that kind of thing to fit into a toilet paper roll. When I find it, I will let you know. But I'm having a little bit of trouble finding a standard doll that you can find. You're wanting one that's around 8 to 9 inches tall. So go ahead and pause the video and get yourself worked down to that level, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've decreased down as far as I can go, which is 24 pegs, and at this point I'm going to drawstring bind off. I'm going to cut me kind of a long tail, okay, and so all I'm going to do is toss over and pull. Now I'm not going to, when I drawstring this, I'm not going to pull it as tight as you may think I would. In fact, I'm not going to completely tie it off until I have the part of the doll dress made. Okay, so go ahead and get your stitches off the loom by doing your drawstring bind off, but do not pull it tight. You can pull it some, but don't pull it tight, because I'm going to show you how it fits a toilet paper roll, and then we'll be ready to start on the actual doll dress. And I'm going to try to explain this because each doll is going to be different. I found it hard to find a doll. I found a 6-inch doll, and even then it seems like it's a little small to me. So what you need is about an 8-inch doll, and those are impossible to find. And with craft stores closed right now, it's easier said than done. Normally, if you go into a craft store, you can find a doll that you need. So I'm kind of making do with what I can find in, say, Walmart, and I'll show you the doll I'll be using, and I'm probably going to be doing some stuff to the doll itself. So okay, so I've drawstringed off, and you'll notice I didn't pull it tight. I can pull it some, but you don't want to pull it tight. You want to keep an opening enough for the doll to fit in, okay? But there you can kind of see what it looks like off. Now, you can do this on a round loom, but it will take doing the drawstring bind off and doing 2 rows in between. So I have a toilet paper roll, and I'm going to put this on my roll. Okay. And as you can see, that fits beautifully. See? And you have your little opening right here. All right. And so now you have a toilet paper roll cover. Now, if you don't want to bother with a dress, or you want to put a little stuffed animal on it, or you want to make a doll to put on it, it's up to you. You can do all that. All right. But that's how you do a toilet paper roll cover that's real simple. All right, as you can see. Now, what I got was one of the 6-inch Frozen dolls. They have one that's in Elsa, and they have ones that are in the other Disney princesses. This is just one that I thought would be really cute with a sailor outfit. And what I'm probably going to have to do is go in and actually take off those paint colors. The downside is they didn't put a fabric top, okay? But the reason why I figured this would work is she has a larger head and body. And so to put her in the paper towel thing, if you go to just the mid, let me move the camera up. So if you go to putting her in about mid-thigh, because the legs want to go out, it works, okay? And when I go to do the dress, it'll hide in that spaced area that's in there right now. Okay, but as I said, I don't want to go in and do the closure too tight, because I want to be able to fit the doll in there, okay? As you can see, when you put her in, and then when you go to do the actual dress, it's going to look like it fits, okay? But not all 6-inch dolls will work. Just the ones with the bigger heads and the bigger bodies would work. You can do a Barbie doll one, but you'll need to cut her legs off at the knees in order to work this, okay? You're going to need to destroy the doll. My suggestion is to go to a thrift store, all right? So we have the first part of this done, which is the how to make the toilet paper roll cover. All right. Now the second part is to create a doll, and we're doing her. Now there is a Barbie doll shaping in here. Let me see if I can find where my notes are for this. Yeah, here we go. So when I did Barbie, I needed 20 pegs, but she's going to take 18 pegs, and she's going to be consistent throughout. So it's, and she's going to take up less stitching than doing Barbie and less decreasing and increasing. So it's 18 pegs, and it's going to be the same for 1.5 inches, which is going to be approximately 9 rows, I think is what my notes say. So 9 rows. So 18 pegs, 9 rows, and then you're going to do 4 rows, 4 or 5 rows to this section here. Okay. And then you're going to have to figure out your neckline. I was going to do a little square off sailor neckline with maybe a V in there. Doing V's are not that hard. I'll show you how that works. But it's not gonna be much. Okay. So what you want to do, if you have, because I need to knit it flat. Let's say you have another loom that's in the same gauge that you don't want to have to do such a small thing on the X loom. You would rather work it up on a smaller loom than the X loom, which is fine. That way you don't have to worry about maneuvering around such a larger loom for such a small area, which is the size of a doll. Okay, so I am going to knit the dress white, and then I'm going to be adding in the flap later. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an E-wrap cast on of 18 pegs. If you're doing Barbie, then you'll probably want to do the 20 pegs, and I hadn't intended on making the Barbie version. I'm going to write that out with the windmill version of the toilet paper roll cover doll, but I'm not going to do it with this one. I'm going to film it. Okay, so I'm going to do E-wrap cast on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Alright, and then I have written that I need to do approximately 9 rows. You can do 10 rows if you want of knit. Okay, so what you can do is go in and just knit your way around. And I would honestly slip the first stitch, knit the last stitch when doing this, so that you have a nice clean sew up onto the doll. Okay. So when I come back to finish this up, what you may find is I've gone in and I've used a paint remover on the doll to get the body color as your base, so that when you put this on, it doesn't have the weird original clothing that they designed on the doll. Okay. Alright, so here's row 1. Alright, and so I'm going to slip that first stitch so that I get a nice chain I can sew up. Alright, so here's row 2. Now if you want to do some texture stitching here, you want to do some fancy stitching, you can. I'm just kind of trying to keep this simple for you. This is just a guideline. This is a base. You can do fancy stuff if you want. You can go in and do some really fancy stitch work. I'm just giving you a baseline on how to go about doing this. so that you can go in and really get creative with it and do like I did with the Barbie one, where it had the windmill stitch as the base and the fancier stitch work around the bodice and that kind of thing. So all I'm doing is giving you a guideline. You can go in and do whatever you want. Most of the time you just need a baseline, and what I'm doing is giving a baseline so that you can do anything that you want with this pattern. You're wide open. So go ahead, pause the video, get your 9 to 10 rows done. When we come back, we'll be ready to do our next section, which will be going to be the shoulder area, where we're probably going to be starting to split things in half, work things flat, that kind of thing. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pause the video, get your 9 to 10 rows done, and when we come back, we'll start splitting this up to where we can put it onto the doll and sew it on there and that kind of thing. Okay, I've done my 9 rows of knit. All right, and now we have the body area that we need to do, and this is where we kind of have to split things up. And when you split it up, you have to think, okay, 9, and then there's the 9 that's split on the back half. Okay, and naturally 9 doesn't split up evenly. So what you can do is you can do say 8 on the front, 10 on the back, that kind of thing. That might be more helpful. So it's 5 here and 5 here, or you can do 4 here and 4 here. What I'll probably do is go ahead and do 4 here and 4 here for the back, and then do the full 10 for the front area. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've been doing a knit the last stitch, slip the first stitch, so I have a nice clean chain to sew up later. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, what you may want to do is go ahead and split up. Alright, mark off your front sections and your back sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so here's your back, here's your back. Alright, and to do your back, you're only going to do 4 to 5 rows. So I'm going to do 5 rows just to be sure. Okay, and so I'm going to just do 5 rows back and forth. And what that'll do is open up an armhole, and we're going to have to sew up the shoulders. So go ahead and slip the first stitch and knit the last stitch, and just go back and forth for 5 rows. So here is row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and row 5. Alright, then what you'll do is you'll bind off those 4 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to slip that first stitch, knit the next stitch, take it back 1, toss the bottom loop over, move it over 1, knit the next stitch, take it back 1, knit over, and do that. Okay, so you'll want to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so you'll want to do the same thing on this side. You can cut it kind of short. Okay, alrighty. So there's your little body. Alright. Okay, so what you want to do next is you want to do the same thing over here on these 4. And the front will work a little differently. Okay, So I'm going to move this over, because what you can do is, it doesn't matter how you do this, just so long as you do the other side the same as we just did this one, okay? So I'm not going to show how you do that side, but I will show you how you do the front. So we have 4 stitches, and what we need to do is, I want to create a V front opening, okay? I'm going to do a slip knot to get me started, okay? All right, so what I want to do is start doing a decrease here in the middle, and because we're working 10 stitches, what we want to do is we want to knit over 4. Okay, so 1, 2, oops, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then what I like to do is, actually we'll take it back one, we'll knit 3. Okay, and then what we'll do is go in, we'll take this over here, and we will knit the 2 together and move it back one. Okay. And what that'll do is it'll produce an angle of the stitch to go out and give you a nice clean line. Not that it really matters, mostly because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing over a flap if we're doing a little sailor thing, okay? And that's what I'm doing. Okay, now what you want to do is knit your way back. Okay, and this is row 2, technically. Okay, so this is row 2, and then we're going to knit our way over. We're going to slip the first stitch, knit the second stitch, knit the way over, and that's row 3. This is row 4. And we'll decrease by 1 more on the way up back, okay? And so this will be slip fits the first stitch, and then you're going to take that stitch, you're going to move it over, and you're going to knit the 2 together, 1, 2, and move it back, okay? And then you're just going to bind off, all right? Okay, and that is your next section, all right? And you're basically going to repeat the same thing that you just did, just in the reverse, and you can see that your movement is consistent there. So I'm actually going to want to start on the outside, that way I don't have a slip knot here. Depends on where you want your slip knot showing up. Showing up under the arm is better than showing up in the middle of your dress, okay? So my suggestion would be to start on the opposite side, and what you want to do is you want to go ahead and knit 3, and because you want that to move that way, you're going to lift that up, decrease over, and then you're going to knit the 2 stitches together, move it back 1, and make sure I got it all. And also I can tighten up that stitch. Okay, so here's your 1, and this is row 2. And row 4. And remember, we're going to decrease on our 5th row. So you're going to slip, knit, and you're going to pick up that stitch, take it over, and you're going to knit the 2 stitches together, and then you're going to move it over and tighten. Then you're just going to bind off. Okay? Now, it isn't much different with how I did my original doll, except I did more increasing and decreasing on the back to be able to do more of the hourglass figure of the Barbie. Right. Okay. And you'll notice I did an E-wrap cast on. What I'm going to do is go in and tighten that cast on. Okay. And that'll tighten up those stitches, but you can see that you have a V in the front. Right there. Okay. Now if you want more finer details, you can switch the dress over to a more finer gauge and just do the dress differently if you want it more detailed. This is just a basic. I mean, it's an open up to what you want to do, maybe give you an idea how to do it. You can just switch it up. If you want to do, say, a 3/8 inch gauge, I think you'd do a 72 peg loom. Set it for 72 and decrease down. Of course, it'd take more rows, but decrease down to the 24 with a row in between. And of course, it'd take more rows naturally. So that 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're about to have our 5th one. And row 5, and then we're going to bind off. Okay, and cut. Okay, here is your doll dress, basically. We're going to add a kind of sailor flap over it. Doesn't look like much right now. I'm going to tighten my cast on. Sometimes I just want to make sure my cast ons are nice and tight, and this is still consistently. So I find my tail, go to the opposite side, and work it down. And still, to me, I realize that, you know, there's been a lot of different cast-ons, but this still, for me, tightens it up to the extent that I want. Okay. And to my preference. Lots of different casts-on. Many of them, you know, are good for hats and stuff, but I still prefer mine. Tighten the cast on for stuff like this. It just, honestly, it works better. Because you can see it really cleans up that line. It always becomes more of a challenge when you start getting closer to the tail. And you can see that really cleans up the line to do that. Okay. Now, what I have done is gone in and created the little dress. Okay. And you want to weave those in. There you go. Alright. And you'll see there's your little dress, and then it'll sew up onto the doll back here. Okay. And if you want to see if it's the doll, right now I'm in the process of stripping the doll. Because it came with, as you saw earlier, a really dark top and full sleeves and that kind of thing, and that's been kind of annoying to deal with. Okay. So, and it looks like it fits the doll just fine. So, I'm not seeing anything that looks too tight or anything like that. When I do the actual flap over the doll, it creates the little sailor thing. It'll work even better. Okay. So, the trick was to cover up, and if you wanted to go ahead and sew it onto the doll and then sew on the little flap, you can do that. You put the doll in there, and the dress is going to actually be sewn to the toilet paper roll, so let me pull that up. Okay, so sew that to the doll, and then you sew it to the actual toilet paper roll. Alright, and you can stop here if you want. You can leave it at this if you want. Or you sew up the sleeve, you sew up the top, you sew up the back, and then you sew it onto the actual toilet paper roll. Okay, that's a real possibility as well. Okay, if you want to keep it simple. But most likely I'm going to add to it to give it the extra flair that I want with the flap and that kind of thing. Okay. But that is how you do the bodice to that particular doll. It changes depending on your doll. I tried to find something that was more common and that kind of thing. Okay, so we want to create a little flap, I guess, that goes over. It has more of a sailor feel to it. Okay, and I want to start off, and I'm not going to do the fan cast on with this. I'm just going to do a real basic cast on, okay? And it doesn't need to be much. It only needs to be about, what are we looking at, 10? We'll say 10. Needs to be 10 across. Okay, so we're going to go and count 10. 1, let's get it back down here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Do remember that this is a flap. It needs to be small, and it needs to be only about 4 or 5 rows. Okay, so I'm going to do my cast on, and I'm going to knit my way back, and then I'm pretty much going to immediately switch to red. Okay, because this counts as row 1. Okay. Okay. So there's my first row. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change my color immediately. I know this is insane to change the color, or it feels that way to change the color immediately. But you don't have that many rows to create this flap with. You're wanting to stick with the exact amount that pull. You want to stick with the exact amount that you did for the front section. Right. So I'm going to loosen those stitches up. And normally I slip it, but because I need the red to show up rather than stagger it, I'm going to go ahead and knit it. Okay. Now the problem you may run into is this might want to curl, so when you go and start to add the the white, what you can do is purl it. Okay. Okay. There is our red. Now we're going to knit our way back. This is row 3. Then we will switch to white, knit that first row, and then purl. Okay. All right, time to change color again. To white. Get as close to the base as possible. Pull. We'll tighten it. We can cut it close. And then you loosen up the stitches. And then you're going to knit your way over, purl your way back, because this is row 4. Okay, and purl your way back. Okay, so what we've done is we've started with our flap on the back, and now we need it to go around to the front of the shoulders. And so what we want to do is we're gonna knit our way back, but then we're going to need to open up the neck area. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go 5, and then move it over 6. Okay, and then knit your way over. And you're going to need to purl your way back and decrease again, and you're going to work this half. So you're going to purl your way back, and you're going to make sure that you decrease again. And what that's going to do is going to open up that back of the neck. All right. And you're going to want to add a bow naturally to the front of the dress. And that you can buy the little pre-made bows if you choose, or you can make one. It's up to you. But you're going to want a little bow on the front. Okay? Alright. Now, and you're going to knit because what you've just done is created more like a shoulder area, and you're going to purl and then you're going to knit, and then you're going to change up again. Okay, then you're going to change to the red, do 2 rows, change up to a blue, and do 1 row, and then do a bind off, and that should keep you even. Okay, with what you've done. Okay, so we've just purled our way over. We're going to knit, and we're going to change over to red again. And when all this is done, you may want to do a little crochet edge to clean up those lines some. Okay, so I'm going to cut that. Pull it. Snip. And loosen up. Okay, and you're going to knit for 2 rows. So here's row 1. And row 2. And then you need to change color again. And pull, and snip, and loosen, okay, and then we do 1, and then you bind off, and that gives you your second row thickness. Okay, Okay, so you're going to do a similar thing. You're going to do on the other side. Okay. 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 So when you pull that, you'll see that that's going to sit over her shoulder. Okay. And you're going to want to tighten that cast on so it looks real clean too. Okay. And if you feel comfortable, you may want to do a crochet edge. Okay. So what you'll do is you'll want to do a slip knot, and this one I'm going to actually add closer to here. And this is supposed to be a purl row, but to make it easier, we'll just go ahead and knit that first stitch and purl it over. Okay. Alright, so purl, and then we will knit and then we'll purl one more time. Okay. And we're fixing to change up to our colors. And so what we're going to do is we're going to knit back and then we're going to change color. Okay? And we're just going to follow the same process like we did over here. Okay? Same process. Change the color to red, do 2 rows, change color to blue, do a single row, and then bind off. Okay? Tighten your cast on, just like we did the dress. And then what you want to do is go ahead and sew the dress up, sew the back. So you want to sew up the back, then sew up the shoulder areas, and probably be easier to go ahead and sew it onto the doll. And then you'll want to sew it onto the actual top here. And then if you feel comfortable, probably a good idea to go in and crochet a white edge all the way around just to clean those lines up. Okay. And then you're going to wrap that around. And what I'll do is say pause the video, get all your sewing done. When we come back, I'll show you how to add your flap here, okay? Okay, so here's my little panel that we made, and I did a little crochet edge to it to kind of clean it up. And I sewed my dress to my cover, and I sewed up the back and sewed up the sides. So this is what it looks like if you don't want to do the panel. You could just make it like this and put a little bow there. That's fine. That'll simplify it if you want. And it's up to you if you wanted to make the panel. I made the panel, and all I need to do now is kind of tack it down to the outfit. Okay, and as you can see, it kind of goes in and matches that. Okay, so what I want to do is go in and tack it down to the dress. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a needle, I'm going to send it through that, send it through chest, and send it through the corner, And do remember, I am intending on adding a little bow there, a little bow right there, so that you don't see this. All right, so I'm going to tie a knot to get it tacked down. And then I am going to add a bow that I'm going to hot glue on right there. So it'll have that cute look about it. Okay. Now, that is how you make a toilet roll doll cover. Okay, I'm going to send this back so you can kind of get a better idea of it. And there's what it looks like from a distance. Simple, cute. And then when I add the bow, that'll do the finishing touches. And that is how you go in and make a toilet paper roll doll cover. Okay, and so I will include the windmill stitch pattern for Barbie, but I'm not going to do a video on it, so you'd have to figure out how you want to do that. But this is how you make these little sailor girl using. These are typically ones that show up in Walmart, so it shouldn't be difficult to get your hands on one of these. But if you do choose to do Barbie, you have to cut her legs off at the knees in order for it to work. But these, while they're a little short, you want to know how short they are? They're a little short. Because of how they made the head and the body fat, but the legs short, it actually looks more in proportion like this. So, and her arms are actually what's keeping her body up. Okay, and you can choose to add a little ribbon there if you want. But that's basically how you make a toilet paper roll doll cover. Okay.